Hey everyone, Susan Stiffelman here. I wanted to do a little Facebook Live for you, and then of course you can tune in later to talk about my conversation with one of our speakers, Rachel Macy Stafford. Many of you know that I'm doing a free 3-day online event later in March on raising children with challenges and celebrating their uniqueness. And we have speakers who are talking about parenting kids with Down syndrome, Asperger's, autism, learning disabilities, anxiety, ADHD, or just a little quirkiness. And I'm sort of fresh off of this most recent conversation with Rachel, who I think many of you know from her wonderful community of parents at Hands Free Mama. And we were talking about how we can look at a child, every child, to see what their gifts are, what their unique contribution or light might be. But that sometimes children are weighed down by a label. And she was sharing, for instance, one of her daughters who could be labeled distracted. And we all, many of us, myself included, can probably relate to that. Oh, what's that? What's that? And, maybe staying focused on the task at hand is a little hard for those of us on the ADD-ish spectrum. But she reframed that as her daughter, instead of being the distracted child, is the noticer. And I love that because in another example, some children are labeled too sensitive, and she was talking about one of her daughters being at another parent's home playing, and that parent said, your daughter's really too sensitive. You really better toughen her up. And that Rachel came home thinking, wait a minute, is that a downside? I'm not going to toughen up my child. She is who she is. And by the way, how do you specifically create a thicker skin? And I could so relate to that because I was very sensitive, still am, and felt that it was a negative quality. And in fact, had a beautiful discussion for the series with Elaine Aron, who's written an amazing book called The Highly Sensitive Person and the Highly Sensitive Child. And I was sharing with her that idea that for me, because sounds can be louder and lights can be brighter, I felt that it was a deficiency or a defect, and was told, you're just being difficult. And in fact, it's my wiring. And this is one of the exciting things I'm getting out of this series that is coming up March 20th and 21st and 22nd. You can register. I'll put the link in here. It's free. It's for 3 days. We want you to tell your friends. But one of the things I'm getting from this is how each child is supposed to be as they are. And that doesn't mean we don't want to help children who need more support, who need early intervention. Maybe they're kids on the spectrum. They need help with social skills deficits. We talk a lot about that. Or they need help learning to manage a lot of sensory input. Many children get sensory overloaded quite easily. The sounds, the fluorescent lighting, the noise, the chaos of the classroom or the shopping mall. So there are a lot of things that we're sharing about how to support kids so they don't feel uncomfortable in their skin. And at the same time, we want them to know that they don't need fixing. So many of us as parents, if our child is a little bit unusual or differently wired, as Debbie Reber talks about, we get sort of the message over and over that we need to fix our child. This doesn't mean that children aren't broken. All of us have something. We all come into this world, even the ones who from the outside, those friends of yours who you think have it all together and their Facebook posts are just fantastic and so impressive. Everybody, I can tell you as a family therapist, I've been in practice for many decades, and I've worked with some of the most famous, wealthy, powerful people in the world. When they come in my office and sit down, their issues, their insecurities, their challenges, they're real, they're human, just like yours and mine. And so it's not like there's some exceptional, that a few people get some special fairy dust. We all have something, some area where we're going to be working to show up in a healthier, more whole, confident, happy way. And for children who have to go to school every single day, many of those kids, if their issue has to do with sitting still or focusing or being socially appropriate, or not blurting things out, or running around the room when they can't sit anymore. For those kids, it's like they have a lid on them all day long. There's a container that they're cramped inside of. And one of the things Rachel and I were talking about, I love this idea, this phrase she came up with, was a safe haven, that we provide our kids, whether it's a physical space in our living room or a little closet where they can, play the tuba or paint or, do the thing that really lights them up, or it's an activity that they get to go to that isn't exactly the same as schoolwork, because many kids don't show up in school with those particular skill sets that are rewarded. One of our guests on this series, Raising Children with Challenges, is Dr. Thomas Armstrong, and he talks about multiple intelligence theory, which I've followed and used for so many years. So if you're a child who happens to have spun the dial and landed on those two types of intelligence that are rewarded in the classroom, logic, mathematic, so this is the sort of math skill set, or verbal linguistic, which is reading, writing, all that creative expression through words, then you're going to be seen as smart. But if you're a child whose natural innate gifts are interpersonal, you really get along or tune into people, or intrapersonal, maybe you're more introverted, you're more self-reflective, you like to spend a lot of time alone thinking, you're more philosophical, or maybe you're body kinesthetic intelligent, meaning that you love to be out, within your body, you're the athlete, the dancer, the climber. Or there's musical intelligence. This is the child who loves music, loves to hear it, can picture it, loves to compose or listen. There's so many manifestations of brilliance and talent, and you're going to hear about this all, of course, in the summit. But listening to Rachel today and having such amazing conversations with people has me lit up, because it's so helpful to hear that other parents struggle and that other parents find their way, even when it doesn't look like everyone else's way. And we have some comments. It's amazing to me how different we all are from each other. I like that positive description of the noticer. Yeah, we're all on our own planet, let's face it. And some of us, the planet that our friend is on or our child is on looks similar to ours. And maybe our planet, the planet that our child lives on, is just a mystery. Like, wow, who lives there? That's just so unusual. But we can learn. And it's so heartening for our children when we take an interest in who they are and aren't just about fixing and conforming them to a particular look or type or a set of behaviors. Someone else says, this is so helpful. My daughter just started middle school and is miserable. Her teachers yell and threaten a lot, and she's sensitive to it. Looking at alternatives, but in the meantime, I want to help her. Yeah. I can relate and I understand, and if nothing else, if your child is currently in a situation where you can't change schools, you really can't protect him or her from what's going on, and we are going to talk in the series about bullying and all of that, but if you are a place where your child can offload, can tell you her truth, without you jumping in with advice or suggestions. Well, why don't you try this? Or why don't you show an interest in other people? And yeah, sometimes children want to practice how to engage with others. Maybe they don't have that natural ability to connect socially, but always start with what a child's strengths are, what their gifts are, what delights you about that child, what fills your heart with joy and awe when you see her face, whatever that child's challenges are. One of my friends is on the series, Peggy O'Neill, and she's a little person, and we recorded in the same room because we were in the same town, and she's like trekked in, Nepal or Tibet. She's hiked down the Grand Canyon. She's 3'6" or something, 3'8". And one of the things that her mother did is she really helped her feel that she was empowered, even with the limitations that came with being small, with having people look at you all the time or point or make fun of you. And she's such an amazing person, and you're going to get to hear from her. So let's see, we have someone else who said, I love learning about multiple intelligences. Yeah, it's been just life-saving for so many of the children I've worked with to understand there's nothing wrong with you. You're just not a great fit or a great match for the kind of activities that schools tend to focus on, which is are those academics, because we're teaching to the task, where, you know, teachers are under a lot of, they work so hard, they're under a lot of pressure to get their you know, averages, the test scores up. But for a child, even just with you, or in that safe haven, or in that activity that they go to once a week, where they get to let their hair down and just show up as, you know, let their freak flag fly, as they say, be who they are meant to be, without the constraints of fulfilling expectations that aren't a great match for that child. That's what excites me. And maybe you can tell I'm so passionate about this because, you know, my work, I'm just the luckiest person in the world to do the work I do, because I love children so dearly. And when I see that the work I can do with parents to support them in being more confident about showing up as that loving, present captain of the ship, not needing their child to be or behave differently to make them feel like they're a good parent, or that to prevent them from thinking they're failing, that work is so fulfilling and joyful, because that trickles down to those children who end up getting to grow up in an atmosphere of being seen and celebrated and cherished just exactly who they are. So I would love it if you would join me for this summit. You can find out all about it on the home page of my website, SusanStiffelman.com. And please, please tell your friends, if you share that link on Facebook or in an email to your child's school, just spread the word, help us spread the word on these series, which are free. You can hear these speakers for 48 hours. We're reaching people in countries all over this world, these tiny little countries where this kind of content and information isn't available. People are hearing about it because you're telling a friend who tells a friend who happens to have a friend in Namibia or in Saudi Arabia. So thank you for tuning in and for being part of our community of parents. We are on fire with happiness that we get to share such amazing people with you, and that we have such wonderful parents in our orbit like you who are so committed to learning and growing together. My very best to all of you. I look forward to connecting with you again here on Facebook. I hope you can join our series, and thanks again for doing the wonderful, wonderful work that you're doing with your children. Bye for now.